those guys approach comedy and has actually confronted them about it on air a few times in the past. Like, of course, the time Bobby Lee told Ari Maddie that he actually doesn't agree with them, openly using racial or homophobic slurs.
I'm pretty sure Bobby Lee's bi, so that's kind of understandable. At least has a lot of stories that lean that way.
Oh, the algorithms love streams and engagement, rewarding you with even more views.
You know when like you're hanging out with another comedian, he says the N-word around you for the first time?
Yeah.
I like that. That's a little trust that I'm in the circle.
Here we go. Let's talk about this real quick, okay? I'm not with that, what you guys are doing in Austin.
What do you mean?
Well, let's be real. I don't like some of the words you guys use freely.
Like what?
It's like edgelord. It's like
Not all of it.
I know, but it's becoming so hacky to me that people, you guys use these words just for the shock factor.
100%.
Like, I'm not into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's
I like
lazy.
the R word sometimes, but I would never say the N word in any environment.
Okay.
The F word I don't really use ever. You know what I mean? And I see Austin comic use it regularly.
It's in the contract.
It's in the contract. Yeah.
If you want to play in Austin, it's in the contract.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is my little tidbit. I've talked about it with other people, and
So yeah, it's pretty bad when Bobby Lee has to be the one to tell you that this so-called material your rat...
It's like edgelord. It's like
Not all of it.
I know, but it's becoming so hacky to me that people, you guys use these words just for the shock factor.
100%.
It's like I'm not into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think the R word sometimes, but I would never say the N word in any environment.
Okay.
The F word I don't really use ever. You know what I mean? And I see Austin comic use it regularly.
It's in the contract.
It's in the contract. Yeah.
If you want to play
Please
in
take
Austin,
me
it's in the
back.
contract.
Yeah. So
God, I
I
hate
don't know.
this
This is my
place.
little tidbit. I've talked about it with other people, and
So yeah, it's pretty bad when Bobby Lee has to be the one to tell you that this so-called material your Rat Pack does on stage is some of the most bottom-of-the-barrel racist slop that truly doesn't belong anywhere in comedy. Because Bobby Lee is genuinely bought into being a part of the Rogan sphere. Like, he and Andrew Santino credit all of their success in podcasting to this entire group effort that they've all curated over the past 10 years or so. But it gets to a point where the stuff these guys are saying on stage is so embarrassing that it needs to be addressed. And really, only Bobby Lee can do something like that. Like, sure, he's in the Rogan sphere, but he's also deeply connected with Mark Maron,
What if
who,
you
if
go
you
to the
don't
right
know by
here?
now, is an absolute anti-bro comedy guy. So him and Bobby are pretty close friends, and honestly, it seems like Mark Maron's exposed Bobby to a lot of the slop that his friends have been producing as of late. Because in their most recent WTF podcast they did together, you can kind of hear Mark getting through to Bobby about how all these Austin meatheads are actually a tribe, whose main goal is to sell out to the lowest denominator of subhuman as possible. And once they figured out how easy it was for them to sell out stadiums like that, they then proceed to turn around and claim to be the greatest comedians to ever grace planet Earth. And once Mark Maron finishes speaking in this next clip here, you're gonna hear Bobby Lee tell a story about how a comedian once told the audience to worship him like a god. And even though Bobby doesn't mention any names, there is a 99% chance that this person was probably Tony Hinchcliffe.
It's like, they're not for everybody. And this is the other problem I have
can be
with
fun, but
the
holy hell, is he
tribalizing of
pretentious.
comedy, where you get a bunch of meatheads
Tony.
that are like, "Dude, that's not comedy. He's selling out stadiums. You're not funny."
all right.
So there's this judging of comics
Are they doing that?
in a sports
Are they doing that?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
If you rail any criticism of YouTube comics, Matt
Yeah.
Ripe or anybody,
Yeah.
the
That didn't
legions
make
of
sense.
meatheads who call themselves comedy fans based
Yeah.
on the competitive nature of what's been established by the Austin school.
Yeah.
That what happens is, you get this sports-like attitude. It's like, you can't sell that many tickets. You're not as funny. This deciding tone of what isn't funny is such bullshit, because the best comics, the most interesting people, almost no one knows.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's just the way it is. As a comic, I can see it. I know it.
Yeah. You're right. I think you're right. But I don't know why.
Because they're challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that are hugely successful, they're not that provocative. And when they are
think he just shit
provocative, they
himself.
can't shut up about it, and it's not even real. Like, I don't want to get canceled.
Yeah.
You won't.
Yeah.
You fucking hack.
Yeah. I remember seeing, I don't want to say his name,
Wow.
but I saw a guy, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And he, you know, after a set, he's in a stadium.
Yeah.
And he tells everyone to pull out a lighter or fucking, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
camera
yeah,
thing,
sure.
right? And he's just like, not like, he's kind of like on stage, like almost
Oh,
like
for the
Jesus,
picture? Yeah.
Like a photo.
Yeah.
Right, and everyone's standing.
Yeah.
I mean, almost worshiping him.
Yeah.
Right?
Behind him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
behind him. And I vomited on my phone. I literally had a reaction to it. I
Wow.
was like, what are you fucking doing?
Yeah.
That's insane.
At this point, I'm just trying to go like a shortcut way.
Is now on Artlist. Get
That's
Google's
gotta be
most
what that
up-to-date
is.
model and all the leading AI models on Artlist. Subject consistency, spot on. Text rendering, flawless in multiple languages. Even the tiny background details, Nano Banana Pro gets it. If you can imagine it, Nano Banana Pro can do it. Write your prompt and watch it come to life. Check out Nano Banana Pro on Artlist and start creating without limits.
Have you ever wanted a sticker of your cat? Even though we prefer mules, we still make it fast and easy to order cat stickers. Get started, select a size and quantity.
That's actually
Upload
super
your
easy
cat image
shortcut.
and breeze through checkout.
Well
Within a few
worth.
hours, we'll send you an online proof showing you how we intend to print and cut custom cat stickers. You can request changes to your proof until you're happy. With easy ordering and fast delivery, Sticker Meow.
So, without a doubt, the anonymous comedian who has his crowds worship him like Jesus is most definitely Tony Hinchcliffe. I mean, there's dozens of photos available of him online doing this very thing. And to Bobby's point, it's
So full of
extremely
himself.
corny. Like, Tony actually thinks he's the greatest comedian of all time, but Bobby sees right through that. Because if you didn't know, Bobby Lee was actually already an established regular at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles when Tony Hinchcliffe was like 13 years old back in the late 90s. So when Tony started working as a door guy at the Comedy Store in 2007, Bobby was already 10 years into this huge comedy and acting career. So for the entire 2010s, Bobby saw Tony try really hard to become this A-list acting comedian, but he was
Yeah, not
never
doing
able to
that.
get that big break. Which, according to
These
Lee,
branches
is
are
the
so
only
narrow.
reason Tony moved to Austin. Like in this next clip here from 2020, you're gonna see Bobby telling Santino that Hinchcliffe actually ended up moving to Austin because he could never nail down a big TV role. In fact, Bobby says that goes for all the other guys too.
He went to Tony Hinchcliffe. Yeah, but
Yeah, those guys moved down there for the Rogan train.
what do you think of that?
So many people.
I know.
I don't even
Wanna
know.
Go?
Tim Dillon's moving down there.
I didn't want to go.
To Austin?
Yeah.
Look, I don't.
Got our houses.
Yeah, we just got our houses.
I mean, at the end of the day,
We
it's
just
like,
got our houses.
yeah, it's like I'm paying mortgage on my house. I'm not.
It's here's my other thing. If you sounds crazy, and I'm gonna say this, and I mean this.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, you don't need to stay in LA. You don't need to be in LA. Okay, fine, I get it. I don't need to be in LA to do what we do. Kind of.
You do.
You do.
Because those guys.
They say that, but they
no,
don't.
But also those guys, right? Guys like Tony and those guys, they don't have like dream. You and I. They don't have dreams. No,
They don't have dreams.
But you don't.
No, they don't
They're
work in Hollywood.
But
cyborgs.
they don't want to like get on a movie or TV or act.
Right. They're not actors.
And that's why, not that I'm an actor, but I like doing it, and
You
it's
are
a
an
part of my, it's a part of what I do, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like I like the challenge of it,
Right. Those guys aren't in the. That's what I'm saying. They're not in the acting side of Hollywood.
and they want to be, some of them.
I think a lot of them don't.
Yeah, but some of them do.
I don't know. Tony. I don't think he goes out for stuff like that. Or
But he's said stuff to me like, I can't get anything.
So according to Bobby, Tony's actually talked to him about giving up on Hollywood because he couldn't nail down any roles. Which is pretty funny because that's exactly what Luis J. Gomez said about him. So this has just gotta be true. I mean, the guy just couldn't swim with the big fish in LA, so he packed his bags up and moved to the smaller pond, where he is indeed now killing it. I mean, there's just no denying that Kill Tony's a huge hit down there. But it's the fact that he's so high and mighty about
There's
that
so many
proves
opportunities to
every
take a
comic
shortcut,
that he interacts with
just
these
so
days,
risky.
that really rubs Bobby the wrong way. which he's actually talked about on Bad Friends with Mark Maron last August.
So I get.
I'm tired of the attitude.
I thought you were going
They
to say
come-
violence in this country.
No.
My shit.
I'm tired. They come up back to LA. One guy, I want to name his name. I go, oh, you seem like you're thriving. And he goes, I'm killing it.
Killing it.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, whoa, dude. You moved out because you couldn't survive here.
Yeah.
This is a different.
It's an animal.
And so Bobby never named Tony there, but the way he said,
I'm killing it,
just makes you think that that was Tony. Like no other comic talks like that. But with that being said, guys, we've all got to remember that Bobby and Andrew Santino are still friends with these guys on the surface, because they actually benefit from them having these major platforms. Like Bobby Lee just shot his first ever comedy special with Hulu earlier this January, so you best believe that right before that comes out this year, you're going to see Bobby make the podcast rounds promoting that. So that's pretty much the entire reason that they never name names on these podcasts. Like, they actually still need to be in good graces with these guys. But with all these clips of them assumably sneak dissing the Austin comedy scene, I couldn't imagine how much Bobby's actually trashing them off camera, you know? I mean, he just jumps at the opportunity to trash comics on Tiger Belly, with even the most random guests. Like, there's this one clip from a year ago where Bobby mentions going to an unnamed comedy club, reading the list
I
of
expected that to
comedians
stop
to
me
perform
way
that
better.
night, and thinking to himself that they were complete hacks, not only are on that list because they're in the community, which can kind of be in reference to any comedy club, but it sounds awfully similar to what Joe Rogan's got going on in Austin.
Scribe is how you stop explaining the same thing over and over at work. Watch this. It'll change your life. Raise your hand if you've told your boss how to do the same thing more than once. Thought so. That's why there's Scribe. Go to scribehow.com. Click Capture, do the task once, and Scribe will create a step-by-step guide you can share automatically. You ever walk someone through a giant process and know they'll forget half of it? Scribe puts everything they need to know. Instructions, pictures, videos, all on one page. So the next time they ask, you just send the link. I know what you're thinking. They still click the wrong thing half the time. Check this out. Scribe will literally guide them through it click by click. Warning. They're going to think you're a genius and ask you how you did it. Just say Scribe. Scribe instantly turns any workflow into a step-by-step guide, so you never have to explain it again. Go to scribehow.com and try it for free. You don't even need a credit card.
Please. Oh.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just
Oh
by
my
thinking
lord.
about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want, and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one, to platforms ready for many. From passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of creation, where you can go as far as
That
your
works.
imagination takes you. Can you imagine it? Let's make your dream a reality, right now.
What I was saying the other day, right, is I'm gonna get in trouble for saying this. So
This is where you draw the line.
yeah. I was at a club the other day. I was looking at the lineup, and I go, this lineup is terrible. And what? I'm not gonna say it. But
Give me their initials.
and our point, the point was is like, if we just booked it based on who gets the most laughs, it would be a completely different lineup. But we don't do that. It's more loyalty and who's been around that gets on.
Cult following.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Where was this?
I'm not gonna tell you. But my point being
No
is that even like
shot.
even other nationalities and color, you know, there's so many other people I would choose before the ones they put up. You know what I mean? But it's out of loyalty and that kind of thing before anything else, and I hate that.
I did a show there once, and it was pretty tough. When you're the only gay guy on a show, and the audience is just primed for some straight white man comedy. And there are some funny straight white men. I'm not here to say that all straight white men aren't funny. There are some funny straight white men out there. But I mean, there was like some
He's
like
Ratatouille.
there was some like, what's up with women and their pussy?
Yeah.
So they could obviously be referencing any other spot, like the Comedy Cellar in New York, for example, which features a lot of these straight white male comics that the guest was referring to here. But regardless, that's pretty much the epitome of Joe's Comedy Club too. Like sure, they feature a lot of women and people of color there, but the overall vibe there is majorly that sort of locker room humor, which is indeed hack. Again though, Bobby Lee knows that they're his friends, and he knows that he's actually in their group. He even states in this podcast that he feels that this type of bro comedy has sort of taken over, and he knows that he's in that circle, but also relates to Mark Maron's belief that comics should be loners that don't really join up in these fraternal rat packs or comedy death squads.
Man, screw this physics engine.
Comedy has now there's now a real alpha male, like you
Just
know.
lost all my momentum for no reason.
There's like a bro.
It's like bro. That's a bro. Like I'm still kind of a part. I think I'm a part of that. No or no? Like my ecosystem, there's a lot of bro.
You are.
I know, but still,
there's like a class of
but the people that my group of guys, you know what I mean, like Theo and these type of guys are like more in the bro.
Oh, Theo Vaughn is like bro-y is the bro.
Yeah. And
are you and Joe Rogan in the same class?
Yeah, we're in the same. I'm in the same ecosystem.
He's like the president.
He's the president of bro. Yeah. But there's a little bit of Mark Maron in me too, though. You know what I mean? You know, I'm sort of kind of in his thing too. So, but
you're like the altiest of the bros, I feel.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Bobby Lee knows that his bank accounts have seen a huge rise since starting his podcasts and getting that Rogan boost. But he can still recognize a hack when he sees one. Like when Ari Maddie said that thing about saying the N-word earlier in this video. Bobby Lee also gets visibly happier whenever his guest trashes that whole scene, Joe Rogan, or any of those other guys. Because Bobby's never really able to name names when he calls them out. So when a guest just crashes out and starts calling them out by name, Bobby really enjoys it. Like for instance,
why did I just go from 0 to 100 miles an hour?
Said that Joe Rogan's just not funny at all, and that it's really strange that Joe's seen as this arbiter of comedy.
Millions of dollars when Rogan and Bert had that thing on and Rogan being the comedy end-all be-all.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
That he's the arbiter of funny.
But can I just...
Considering all the times Joe Rogan has made us all laugh.
I understand.
And so I think Bobby probably thinks Rogan's not too great at stand-up, but by all means, Bobby and Joe Rogan are way better pals than him and Hinchcliffe. Especially since Joe Rogan stood up for Bobby Lee after he was threatened by Brendan Schaub and Brian Cowan over FaceTime. Like, Joe really didn't like that, and
I
some
somehow
people
missed
even think
that.
he pushed Brendan further away because of it.
I might have to fly to LA and hold his hand and drag him on a flight.
I think he just needs a real invitation.
He knows I love him. Because there's been a lot of drama lately, and one of the things that happened was somehow or another my name got entered into this thing, and I don't want to get into it in too much detail, but I'm like, okay, I must call Bobby, and I called him and I said, listen, I don't know what kind of, I'm just hearing about this nonsense now. I love you. I would never let anybody talk bad about you. I would never let
What
anybody
is
come on the
that?
show and talk bad about you. I think you're an awesome guy. I think you're incredibly talented, and I know that you have fear of like performing and putting on a special and stuff like that. But I really think you should, because I think you're one of the best comedians alive. And I've said that to him many times. I always give him shit like, when are you going to do a special? What are you doing?
So Bobby Lee and Joe Rogan are probably good pals in real life. Not sure if Bobby really agrees with the Trump backing though, but he'll still go on to Joe's podcast once he works up the nerve. Like, believe it or not, the only issue he has with Joe is that he scares Bobby, which he said multiple times on Bad Friends, and it's apparently the only reason why he doesn't go on Joe's podcast very often.
Who?
Buff Eyes.
Who's Buff Eyes?
Rogan.
You think he's my dad?
Yeah.
Is he my dad?
You get like a little like, you know what I mean? You look at him like your dad.
Why don't you like Rogan?
I love him. Interesting.
Why?
It's so funny what you're doing right now because obviously I love him.
Well, you called him my dad, my daddy. Like, oh, I am president. Like, you don't like him, you love him.
I love Rogan, but I'm intimidated by him.
Every time he comes to the store, do you get nervous?
Well, it was 3 weeks ago. His wife was there. I love her.
Yeah, she's cool.
And she noticed the shoes I was wearing. And then
What is that physics engine?
he goes, how come he gets so
Actually,
It's a legitimate
just
question.
RNG. What?
I go, because what you white people don't fucking understand.
Restream.
one live stream, 30+ destinations. If you want to
It's
multi-stream,
insane how
go to
many
restream.com.
ads I get for something I already have. What the hell?
So it's pretty funny that Bobby Lee is intimidated around Rogan, because Bobby Lee is just leagues above Joe when it comes to comedy, and he really runs laps around the guy when it comes to audience approval ratings. I mean, a lot of people think that he's really the only reason that Bad Friends is so successful, because when you compare the views that Santino gets on his solo podcast compared to Bobby's solo podcast, Bob just blows Santino out of the water. So Santino's not really the draw here. But Bobby, after all, is a pretty timid guy
I love
that
Bobby
doesn't really
Lee.
understand how much pull he has. But anyways, Bobby Lee eventually worked up the courage to go on JRE, and they actually had a great episode together. There was one part of the show, though, that got pretty interesting, because Joe Rogan
Maybe I do
ended
need to
up
start going for that
confronting
big
Bobby
jump.
Lee about trash-talking Austin and saying that he would never move there, which was all in good fun, but at the same time, it was pretty petty. I mean, of course Joe Rogan would have scored the jackpot if Bobby Lee lived there instead of Los Angeles, but his feelings got hurt when Bobby turned that down.
He lives here now, right?
Yeah, Duncan lives here.
Everyone's
Yeah.
asking me to come.
You should come. I know you were talking shit about moving to Austin, but listen.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. I watched the video.
No, I didn't.
Don't lie. You did. You did.
What'd I
I'm
say?
not fucking moving to Austin. I don't leave my neighborhood. I don't go to Compton. I stay right here.
Could I say something?
What?
You know what, man? No, you know. You know what, man? You know what, man?
What?
Listen,
What?
you have to understand what you guys did.
What did we do?
You guys took half of the talent out.
Yeah.
So I was just butthurt.
We brought another bunch in too. Like Shane Gillis lives here.
I know. I know.
I think Shane Gillis is
I know you
leaving.
guys are killing it.
We're having.
I
That's
went
why
to the
I
club
heard.
last night.
Going back
Come
to Philly
I
or
know, but
You're
whatever.
more than Paulie's thinking about it. Paulie's here a lot.
I know. And
Paul
then
was just here the
Theo
other day.
thinking about it.
Theo's thinking about
Right.
it. Yeah. They're all just worried that like people go, oh, you need to suck on Rogan's nuts.
Oh, I would never suck your nuts.
I don't ask.
I wouldn't do it.
If you did, it would be a problem.
Yeah.
I'd be like, why are you doing this? I'd have to be
Would you
asleep.
hurt me?
No.
So after seeing all these clips, you can come to the conclusion that Bobby Lee has mixed
Bobby Lee's
feelings
fucking
about the
hilarious.
Austin comedy scene. Like, he knows he's in the Rogan sphere, but he's not going to beat around the bush when it comes to acknowledging the fact that there's some of the worst comics to ever grace the stage. He understands where Mark Maron's coming from completely, and I'm pretty sure that he finds Tony Hinchcliffe absolutely
Going the wrong
insufferable.
way.
Everyone else over there, like Joe Rogan, seems to be just alright for Bobby. It is pretty strange, though, that he told Theo how he doesn't miss any of them. I mean, that's gotta say something, right? Anyways, let me know what you guys think, and with that being said, thanks so much for watching.
New Casually Explained. Let's fucking watch that. Yes,
All your
dude.
next video
Just
ad
the
needs is
squad
one
watching
AI video
Casually
editor on
Explained
file.
together. Casually
And
Explained,
what you
the
don't
global military
is a
superpower.
full
Well, we
production.
all know there's nothing we can do to improve our own lives, and it's best left to whoever's in the White House.
Okay.
It's also the case that the people at the top of our institutional hierarchies have more than just the clamoring citizens to answer to, as they have real issues on the global stage they have to make worse. Meaning, in order to actually understand the larger scale objectives of a nation, we have to zoom out and view every country like we're playing Civilization, and we're in charge of large-scale decision-making for the country's resources and political interests, rather than viewing the world as a citizen from that country. A good example of this is that in economics and politics, everyone says that America is the most powerful country in history, as they have the best technology and are the richest civilization of all time. Then immediately everyone in the comments says, well, I'm American and I'm not rich. I'm sure that's correct, but observe how zoomed out I am on the map. I can't see you at all, meaning you are a trifling statistic to me. Similarly, what's clear both in real life and in video games is that the most significant threat to your empire is other nations enacting military force towards you while you're just trying to get your supply chain.
You guys ever play the game Empire Earth? Is anyone old enough to have played that game? It was a strategy game where you could go from cavemen to the... It was so fucking badass. But the only problem with that game, I think if I played it now, then I'm like a fucking RTS gamer, you could probably rush
This is
someone
the
and
furthest
kill
I
them.
made it.
Back when I played as a kid, everyone played slow. And so no one could ever attack anyone. Because if I ever spent my resources making an army
I wonder what
of like
speedruns look
horsemen
like
or
for
whatever,
this
and you
game.
attack, by the time they
Gotta
get there,
be,
they have the next age. So it would be like your fucking horsemen run into tanks. And then if you try to attack with tanks, oh, they have robots. Same time with robots, they have fucking laser beam things. It's you could never like do anything. So every game lasted so fucking long.
For this reason, I wanted to look at the most powerful nations on Earth in terms of military might, which means looking at all 7 nuclear powers in the world, starting with the weakest and moving up to the strongest. To preface, I'm not going to be
Pakistan
mentioning
is
any
lowest,
countries
I
in
would
Africa or
assume.
South
Maybe.
America. This is because they don't
They have a
any
decent
nukes,
army.
meaning they don't matter or exist. So we can just delete those. This is how they do in the Pentagon, by the way. First, we have our honorable mentions, which are countries that have no nuclear weapons but are still extremely formidable.
Thought that was something like that.
Iran currently does not possess any nuclear weapons, but recently was enriching uranium to levels above 60% in a facility 90 meters under a mountain. This was a bit suspicious and of course alarming to America's Department of Defense, because as the name implies, what America is defending itself from is another country possessing an object that its current arsenal couldn't destroy. Thankfully, there is not yet such a thing. Just so you know, I wrote that description before they rebranded to the Department of War, which, let's be honest, if you thought America was ever defending itself from anything, the only technology they would need is an Iron Dome that shoots down Boeing 767s. Saudi Arabia. Unrelated, Saudi Arabia also has no nuclear weapons, but is still top 10 globally in terms of defense spending,
what
and
is
has a fairly
that?
strong diplomatic relationship
Special
with the United
skin.
States and Bill Burr. To explain the political
6-7.
attitude of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, you have to know a famous quote from the ruler of Dubai, which was, "My grandfather rode a camel, my father rode a camel, I drive a Mercedes, my son drives a Land Rover, his son will drive a Land Rover, but his son will ride a camel." This statement might sound like he's humbly stating from shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, but he's really saying, yeah, I'm just built different. Which pissed off his kids in the House of Saud, and now they all get chauffeurs.
That's not what he's saying. He's saying that if we build our entire nation on oil wealth, eventually the oil will be gone and it'll all go to shit. That was the point of the quote. The point of the quote was to inspire people to diversify the industry and exports of the nation. Which, by the way, they haven't done.
My
To be
bad.
clear, I mean, I actually want to make a separate video about this, but have you seen the update on the line? Have you seen the update on the fucking big line city? They're turning it into a goddamn data center. It's the fucking dot. Oh, was he gonna say this? I didn't pre-watch this shit. You guys are saying the dot.
Nonetheless, they've recognized they can't just print money from selling oil forever, and their current grand strategy is to transition their economy from a gas station to the hub center connecting Africa to Eurasia and become the economic center of the Middle East. Plus, after hyping up their plans to build a 170-kilometer-long city that is taller than the Empire State Building.
Well, I guess you got pretty much this too. Next thing that's gonna happen, by the way, after this fucking thing falls apart, is they're gonna start pulling back on all the insane sports commitments they've made. People are like, oh, it's a genius fucking strategy. They're sports washing. Oh, Saudi Arabia's so brilliant. I'm like, no, it's not brilliant at all. They're just dumping money. They're just making stupid investments.
Hoping for the
All
best.
gonna dry up with the oil price being down.
It was getting me excited for someone to actually do something cool but really stupid for once. They shockingly paused construction and were then like, maybe we can turn it into an AI data center instead. Frankly, I'm pretty sure if you said to the Crown Prince, here's my idea for a new super project, then slid him a photo of a gaming PC, he'd write you a blank check. On to the real list.
He doesn't
Coming in
have
at
them.
number 7 as the weakest nuclear superpower is Israel. This is because Israel has no nuclear weapons, as it has committed to keeping the Middle East denuclearized. But they have stated that while they have no nuclear weapons, if they were to come under a mortal threat, they would be forced to use them. After turning the Gaza Strip into the Gaza Strip of all previous civilization, their current geopolitical objectives are to deal with international social outrage over their use of brutal force over a weaker territory by using their enormous political and media influence to convince radicalized Americans that they don't have enormous political and media influence, which is going about as well as you could expect. Number 6, North Korea. North Korea is estimated to have about 50 nuclear warheads, although they're far more powerful and effective than any other nation's nuclear warheads because Kim Jong-un personally guides each of their targets, always knows where they'll
doesn't
land,
miss.
and never makes a strategic mistake.
doesn't miss.
Their current geopolitical objectives at home are to continue launching ballistic missile tests over South Korea in order to further refine their capacity for strategic inaccuracy. Meanwhile, abroad, the soldiers they sent to the Kursk region to help Russia wouldn't stop peacefully gooning to dancing girls after seeing the internet for the first time and have been sent home, likely undermining North Korea's credibility from the inside out with their tales from the free world. Number 5 and 4, Pakistan and India. While even bigger in population than China with 1.45 billion people, India doesn't yet have anywhere near the wealth nor industry. Pakistan is much smaller in terms of population with about 250 million people, and even with half the GDP per capita at $1,500 US.
I feel like a lot of
it's
people
still more
forget
than enough to
how
secure
populous
strong
some of
borders
those
around
countries
India, as
are.
both countries have about 200 nuclear weapons. Pakistan has significant trade and alignment with China, which allows China to strengthen their access through continental Asia and into the Middle East, whereas India is more aligned with the West, securing maritime trade and allowing them to bring you DoorDash anywhere in the world. Now we get to the top 3, which are considered the
Gotta push
real
this out of
major
my way.
superpowers in the world and a major jump up in power level from everyone else.
No risks. Just fucking incompetence, I guess.
Russia. Russia is by far the weakest of the three global superpowers, and frankly, even Western analysts were surprised when Russia invaded Ukraine and it went so poorly for them. Its greatest strength is its enormous abundance of natural resources and sheer landmass, meaning they have access to the Arctic Ocean, the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, and land trading routes to China, Europe hypothetically, and the Baltics.
Dude, they're getting insanely low-broed by China right now, though. So much of this eastern part of Russia is like high-key owned by China. All the investment is done by Chinese firms. Like Chinese businessmen are flying in round the clock here. I mean, this is becoming like a total. And then because of the sanctions, they just sell everything to China, so they have one buyer. So I mean, yeah, Russia's just getting completely hollowed out as a fucking raw material source for China.
While obviously a shadow of the Soviet Union, a lot of analysts are downgrading Russia's superpower status even further, as their military capacities seem much weaker than previously thought, and Western sanctions mean they're extremely reliant and arguably at the mercy of China as a primary trade partner. While Russia isn't overwhelming in terms of strategic military power, they are basically unconquerable because they have 6,000 nuclear weapons, which is more than America. And so it's kind of like fighting a Voltorb who might just get pissed you're winning and at any moment self-destruct. At the moment, their grand strategy is unclear, as a lot of Western politicians have assumed Putin dreams of re-expanding their land empire towards the former borders of the Soviet Union, which is plausible at best and definitely unachievable in practice. Meanwhile, Putin says that pretty much all of Russia's military actions are not for conquest, but preemptive self-defense from the expansion of NATO. For people who are not aware what NATO is, if you ask a Westerner, we would say it's the political and military alliance formed between the United States and Western Europe after World War II. It was then extended to more eastern countries over time as they wanted trade relationships with the West and security guarantees for themselves after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the formation of a still threatening modern Russia to their east. This is of course my Western bias speaking, because you ask Putin what NATO is, he would say, Mordor.
Or if you ask Kim Jong. Just to be clear, there's someone else within NATO who's constantly talking shit on it and trying to undermine it, and it has something to assault other nations within it.
At any rate, it seems unlikely any further land conquest is going to occur after Ukraine, because what was supposed to be a quick little pro-gamer move that everyone was going to ignore ended up looking like this on the live conflict map in January 2023, and this is what it looks like 3 years later, so you can make up your own mind what that means.
It means there's no outcome that is good for Russia. Even the outcome is, no matter what, also bad for Ukraine at this point. But they've lost so many lives. Even if they were to somehow take Kyiv, at this point wouldn't mean anything. The economic disaster is the one thing that kind of scared me, though. In this video, it kind of ties into it. I've been reading a lot about the Ukraine war, actually. It's like I just keep there's a couple of Substacks, and it's like just imagining a Russia after.
Thinking about how far I am from the ground is actually so anxiety-inducing.
As much as I personally despise Putin, the problem is a Russia that is in an economic disaster, that doesn't have a strongman Putin-type figure, is like at extreme risk of balkanizing, or there's just so many nuclear weapons there. There's so many nuclear weapons, and without some authority, it puts the amount of risk of these nuclear weapons falling into different hands is like insanely high. There's thousands of nuclear weapons in Russia. You know, it is a problematic. Like, there's actually a lot of indications that you want Putin to stop invading Ukraine, but not lose power.
God, I wish there were checkpoints.
China's biggest strength is turning their country from what was essentially an agrarian peasant society getting conquered by the Japanese during one of their many angry phases in the 1930s into the largest industrial economy in the world and second largest GDP in quite literally 40 years. They have a population of 1.4 billion and a GDP per capita of $13,000 US, which is absolutely absurd given its size and where they started. A common sentiment you'll hear online is that China actually only has a population of 800 million, but then you ask for evidence and they're like, well, some Japanese scientists measured their annual salt consumption and it was lower than expected. Which is complete nonsense, because my grandma's Japanese, and if you said, yeah, Chinese salt consumption's about 2/3 of what we expected, what do you make of that? She would have said,
make a lot of sense, Jamie. Chinese don't know how to cook properly.
Nevertheless, what makes China frightening is that because of their export economy, they have a
They're on the
massive
MSG
industrial
kit.
capacity. They have similar numbers of tanks and warships to the US, albeit smaller ones, and their air force and overall system technology are far worse. But in terms of shipbuilding, China has a gross tonnage capacity of over 230 times the US and produced over 1,000 commercial ships last year. And America made 8.
Insane.
Not 1,000, the number 8. And in case you think that isn't a problem, it's Chinese commercial shipyards that also make the destroyers. Currently, China's next big move is most likely the annexation, aka...
No, I mean, this is a big thing. Isn't that the grand military, where they first revealed the Dawn Row Doctrine? But they also fully admit that, like, a massive amount of our military supply chain is made in China. Like, right now, our military. Bullets, ammunition, drones, ships, tons of things that our military is made in China. That's where all the manufacturing is. And even like if you talk about, there's a lot of military contractors in America.
My heart jump.
Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, all these fucking huge parts of where they source their supplies is from China. So it is a strategic vulnerability. Absolutely. People discount it. I mean, literally in Ukraine right now, so many of the drones are from China on both sides.
I thought it would
both
be
Russia
okay.
and fucking Ukraine are using parts or outright drones that are made in China. It's like China's selling both sides of a brutal. So that's the part of it. I want to say one more thing though. Which was, wait, go back. What was it about this? Oh, this. Yeah, China. If you break it down, it's really like two countries. It's like this eastern part of China.
Well, maybe it was.
It's like this high-income, super industrialized country, and there's like this massive agrarian, low GDP per capita. Like if this was a separate country, it would have a much higher GDP per capita. And then there's like this tacked-on huge population, so it brings down their per capita numbers.
Hey, can we buy the really good computer chips from you? America was like, well, obviously not. That wouldn't benefit us at all. But like, imagine if Vancouver Island was its own country and had the best oil reserves in the world, and America was like, hey, can I buy some? And Vancouver Island was like, no, we use Chinese wellheads, so we only sell them the good stuff, but you can have the shitty oil we sell to everyone else. If that happened, I can assure you that I would be getting bombarded with freedom and democracy against my will well within 24 hours. So while I'm rooting for Taiwan, if you add on the fact that there are American military bases in Japan and South Korea, and they have access to bases in the Philippines, China's only way of securing clear access to the Pacific Ocean is Taiwan. Meaning it's not looking so great for the little guy right now. And they have access to...
One more thing on this, because this is not really how it went. This is how it went at the beginning, right? China's like, I want to buy NVIDIA GPUs. Or Chinese companies, not China. Chinese companies are like, we want to buy NVIDIA GPUs. And then America says, no, you can't buy them. You can't buy them. Taiwan, you're not allowed to export them. Then a bunch of them get exported anyway. They get exported through Singapore. A ton of them. They just go through, they get around the sanctions. And then when America drops this sanction, China goes, actually, you're not allowed to buy. Tells all the Chinese companies, you're not allowed to buy them. Because actually, China never wanted their companies to buy NVIDIA GPUs. They wanted the companies to buy homegrown Chinese ones so they could get better. China
forced
never
to
wanted
produce
them.
better
China
ones, would be way better for their domestic production.
Which they did. It's stupid. The idea of these tech chip sanctions was so backwards. It did the opposite effect. Buying NVIDIA in China would benefit NVIDIA. It would benefit America. It would benefit. The idea that you could tech blockade was stupid. It didn't work.
Number one.
At Vistaprint, we print all the signs that help your small business stand out. We print tabletops that get your brand seen up close.
The West and partners. You already knew we were number one because I don't want to become the 51st state. The Western alliance of NATO and its homies post-World War II is essentially what everyone watching this video will have grown up and experienced and is likely currently living within. Our greatest strength is by far our enormous wealth and prosperity gained from free trade and cooperation. This came about because post-World War II, once everyone basically agreed to get along with each other instead of making world wars in every 2-decade tradition, this allowed the proliferation of the American global banking system called the Eurodollar, which was kind of like a banking telecom network throughout the world, allowing the proliferation and trade of the US dollar in Europe, Japan, and then basically everywhere else. Because of the West's perception as a liberal, rules-based democracy centered around free and fair trade, everyone trusted the currency and began using it and saving it to use later as a reserve, resulting in what people call the US dollar reserve currency system. Even today, 58% of all global reserves are in dollars, 50% of all trade is done in US dollars, and 90% of all foreign exchange is in dollars as well, which allows immense privilege in terms of global influence.
Who's doing trade in pound sterling? Honestly, this is like 80% tax fraud. The global wealth that flows through London still is to dodge taxes. They're still like one of the best tax havens. They have all these fucking little English islands that have no they're like part of the banking system through London, but they have no tax laws. Yeah, Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey, Virgin Islands. All these islands for Great Britain basically exist for the global rich to put their wealth in London and still be part of like this connected global system. But they put it through a corporation on one of those islands, and there's so many laws there that like allow them to hide the source of the money, hide who they are, and avoid taxes. That is why London still has financial power, despite the UK's dramatic fall off. They converted their economy into a finance hub for tax dodgers. And then, the global reserves here is missing a key thing. There's the dollar, there's the euro, there's the yen, there's the pound. What is it missing that people keep their reserves in lately? A little bit of this, bro. A little bit of this. In the future, it'll be Counter-Strike skins, but for now, it's gold, which is making up a larger and larger percentage of central bank holdings.
You can sort of think of it like how the global language of business is English. Europeans speak to Europeans in English, except Italians. Educated Chinese students learn
Ah,
English,
why
and if
not?
you want to have a successful international
glowing, it
career,
must be
you
good.
essentially must learn English. That means for people born into it, you don't have to do any work, and you get all the rewards. If your hopes and dreams are to be successful in music, film, tech, finance, business, professional political streaming,
All right, never
you have
mind.
access to the largest markets right away. When you're thinking of your dream career, the first step for nearly all Westerners is thinking, what if I fail and people make fun of me? But for everyone else, the first thing they have to do is learn a completely different language to fluency and then move to a different country. This is essentially the same privilege as the US dollar in that it has a global monopoly on banking and trade, meaning the currency that you create is the currency everyone uses, not just your
Do I have to
citizen.
go to
So you
the-
can pull the levers of not just national, but global monetary fiscal policy in your favor if you hypothetically had any idea what those levers did. With that said, currently the geopolitical grand strategy of the West is in complete disarray, because prior to Trump 2.0, both the Democrat and Republican plan was essentially to maintain the pre-existing Western rules-based order in conjunction with its allies in Europe and Asia, with only pocketed military intervention as fires needed putting out, or some perhaps slightly imaginary threats emerged. Even now, it's still not
The
clear what the new
WMDs were
hard-right
real.
grand vision is, or if there even is one.
They just, people don't talk about how good they are at hiding them. That's the fucking thing no one gives Bush credit for. Saddam was incredible at hiding the WMDs. He buried them deep, bro. We still haven't found him. But I swear to God, he wasn't wrong. It was the pickaxe mining for diamonds guy, and it was a bunch of nuclear weapons and chemical weapons. And they were right about to find him, but then everyone at home got mad and said, oh, you're wasting our money. You're wasting our money and our lives in 20 years. And we were just about to find him. And it's fucking crazy that you guys didn't let. Bush would have been vindicated.
But if you read some of the partially human thinkers that seem to be whispering in Trump's ear, and you really interpret generously, it would seem the basic premise is we have to stop languishing and twiddling our thumbs as China becomes a threat to our position as global superpower. We need domestic industrial capacity to come back because we have no way to build our critical industry technology in volume if they decouple their economy from us. America shouldn't use our resources to be the protectorate militarily of Europe. They have the resources now to do it themselves. And America will establish political security over Central America, locking down a soft border for the entire northern continent, while using bases on Greenland to secure the Arctic shipping lanes, which are now open nearly year-round since polar ice has retreated in the last 50 years. Not because of climate change, though, that doesn't exist. On paper, it's not like there's anything that unusual about the plan. It just represents a particular form of extremely hawkish foreign policy. The
Nice
problem
jump,
really
dude.
is the not on paper part, which is using forceful executive powers to manipulate your allies while demolishing any pre-existing trust and goodwill. Then circumventing all democratic political channels to achieve it as fast as humanly possible, causing massive social upheaval in your own country and the world. And all of this is while defying the entire fundamental basis of the Western alliance in the first place, which is ironically destroying the social cohesion and resulting trade and finance empire that made America great post-World War II.
I don't know why I wouldn't be able to download
From
this
everything I've looked
offline
at, pretty much
game.
everyone seems to either think that America is trying to intentionally disconnect
like
and
a-
isolate
I
itself
don't
from
even
Europe
think I'm a
and its allies
third,
in an
I'm
act
like
of
a quarter.
ultra-nationalist self-suicide combined with an economic Cold War with China, or that they're finally using strong-arm tactics to concentrate executive power and accelerate decision-making, allowing them to bring back real military strength, security, national identity, and industrial power to a stagnating Western empire. Frankly, I don't think anyone has any idea because everyone I read on the topic just keeps getting every prediction wrong. And if I were playing your boy Donald in a grand strategy game, I'd be very confused, and all I do is keep a very wide berth to protect my light bulb. But the good news is that at the very least, if you can get past the lying, the corruption, and Rape Island, the characters this season have been the best written I've ever seen. Unlike politics of back in my day, which was mostly about either having elite-level charisma, or just being born into the ruling class, winning on being relatable or hot, and then having absolutely no idea what you're doing. Some people are like, yeah, but Jamie, this isn't Game of Thrones. This is the real world. It could end with you dying in a nuclear war.
Snap your W-2.
Oh, time for it to leave the
taxes
scene.
100% free, plus get your biggest refund. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. No schedules except for Earned Income Tax Credit, Child Tax Credit, and Student Loan Interest. File now.
Which always makes me think, nah, I'm down. Now, unlike NATO, what shouldn't be collapsing is your access to an allied network of telecom towers giving you affordable access to cell phone coverage
ad?
wherever you travel to. With today's sponsor, Saley, you can insure just.
Check out Saley. Check out Saley. It's an ad. Good video. I mean, good video. Definitely interesting discussion. God, I love Obama's face. He's married, bro. Back off. Fucking back off.
Many people were being forced to kind of either eat expired food, rotten food, or just go hungry. Many people were not even getting screened medically when they came in, and they were also not giving people adequate means of communicating with the outside world. So some of just the basic essentials that federal standards dictate you're supposed to require, give people in these facilities were not there. And so in that case, the inspectors came back and said that there were 60 violations of ICE's detention standards, but there are still significant concerns about this facility where there have been 3 deaths there just in the past few months. One of those deaths was a man named Geraldo Lunas Campos, is a 55-year-old Cuban national. In this case, they put out a press release saying, you know, he was sent to solitary confinement, and a little while later, they found him unresponsive. I got in touch with the family of this man, who had been in touch with the medical examiner who was examining his body. And the medical examiner told the family that they believed that it was a homicide, and that this man looked like he had been essentially choked to death. I subsequently found witnesses, people who had also been detained and witnessed this event, who had witnessed guards choking the man to death, and they said his last words were, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe."
Breaking news, breaking news. I hope you Americans out there, ages 18 to 35, are excited and happy to take a break from working 3 jobs alongside your 6 roommates next to a freeway in St. Louis, and possibly be deployed overseas by our senile geriatric baby king to go spread the American dream worldwide. Because we are
a baby
at war,
king
baby.
is the most
yeah.
apt description.
The former supreme leader of Iran was noodle-knocked by Epstein robots in the wee hours of the night last Saturday, less than a week after El Mencho experienced death by Shorty. And now, several U.S. service members have been killed, and Trump says that things are likely to escalate over the course of the next few days and weeks. Persians in L.A. are quite excited, but some tears are flowing in Tehran, and I'm sure some of you guys, especially Americans, might be thinking, why now? Why'd we bomb Iran? What the helly? Well, according to Marco Rubio, it was to get ahead of a forecasted Iranian revenge plot that would likely occur after an Israeli offensive strike that was supposed to happen this week, as communicated behind closed doors between Israeli and U.S. intelligence. So once again, it appears that our hand was forced by our alleged greatest ally, Ghislaine Maxwell's father's employer, and we were embroiled in yet again another expensive and deadly Middle Eastern conflict, like back in the good old days before social media. And I know, again, some of you guys might be thinking, don't we have a $36 trillion debt? Don't 60 to 68,000 Americans die every single year because they can't afford medicine or healthcare? Isn't the worker share of the GDP the lowest since the Industrial Revolution? Didn't Trump run
fucking
on
awful.
an anti-war platform that promised to return domestic manufacturing jobs to regions of the country who were sold out and abandoned by union-busting corporations? Will the country that I pay exorbitant taxes to figure out how to provide for my essential needs in the way that dozens of other functional democratic nations across the world have? Will I be okay? And to that I say, listen, partner, get your head out of your ass and be a team player. It's Team America, bitch. And like our baseball coaches once said, there's no I in team. However, there is an I in the Greater Israel Project, so put your combat boots on. You and I are going to Iran. Anyways, guys, my name is Andrew Callahan, and you're watching Fivecast, our broadcast, podcast type of deal over here at Channel 5, where we have long-form conversations with interesting people about relevant topics. Today, we're going to be talking to Douglas McMillan, a corporate accountability reporter for the Washington Post, who's covered a variety of things over the past couple years, including a privacy cover-up by top executives at Google, lapses in safety oversight at Boeing's board of directors, and gaps in the oversight of the largest lifeguard training program in the U.S. But he's also done some great reporting on ICE, immigration and customs enforcement. They've been in the news a lot lately for their public actions in places like Minneapolis and Los Angeles. But McMillan's coverage is less about their street operations and more about what ICE does in private, behind the cold walls of detention facilities, many of which are owned by corporations like Geo Group and CoreCivic. Coincidentally, companies who have been major donors to the Trump campaign that have been rewarded tenfold with million-dollar contracts since his re-election. So these for-profit, private prison contractors are generally known for their lack of oversight, mysterious deaths on premises, and detainee abuses. But because they're closed off to the press, it's hard to get a visual on what the hell's actually going on in there, which is where Douglas comes in. And also, we do too. If you, that's right, you, have had a recent experience in ICE detention that you want documented or archived in some way with full anonymity, please email me at andrew@channel5.news. I'll be sure to get back to you. First though, in Fivecast tradition, I want to share 2 positive news stories to remind the public that there are still positive, net good developments occurring in small pockets in the U.S. and across the world. So positive story 1, coming out of Palo Alto, California, Ro Khanna's district is coming from Stanford University, where scientists have cured, that's right, eliminated and eradicated type 1 diabetes in a local mouse without any sort of insulin or immune suppression. They use something called the double transplant method, surgically replacing 2 failing organs with new ones, a bilateral procedure that rendered that little bastard diabetes-free. No side effects, no Ozempic, just happy living. Our social media staff reached out to the mouse for comment, but unfortunately, he was hiding in the vacuum and wouldn't come out. At least he's been cured of something that 12 to 14% of Americans suffer from, and it's even worse in Arkansas. Congratulations to Stanford, the mouse, and everybody else. You've done it.
Just a
Hope it works
stumble.
on humans.
I can still make it.
Second positive story is coming out of Madison, Wisconsin, where we happen to have a secret documentary screening in just 4 days
Oh
this
my
Friday
God,
at
this
the
is
Orpheum Theater
impossible.
that I'm going to get to in a minute. But in case you're curious, tickets are available at www.channel5.news. Anyways, in Madison this year, recent reports say their electric buses, their public electric buses, their EVs, were emission-free and reported 0 mechanical problems throughout the entirety of this bone-chilling winter. No gear breakdowns, no
there.
frickin' problem with the space heaters, just smooth sailing without shooting diesel fumes
It's an
into our
invisible
precious
wall
ozone layer.
along you.
Let's go, Madison,
For no
Wisconsin.
reason.
I'll see you Friday, and here's a bit more about the tour. Don't skip it.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Don't upload your videos to YouTube. Upload to Restream, where we will live stream it to YouTube and all your platforms at once. Get ready for 5 times more engagement and views. Oh, the algorithms love streams and engagement, rewarding you.
This is not an advertisement, by the way. But did you hear that about a year ago, we bought back our old show, All Gas, No Brakes? Remember, from 2019 to 2020? My first show. We bought it back, as well as the entire catalog of unreleased All Gas, No Brakes episodes.
If you're my friend and you come visit me in the RV, do not take a shit.
Oh, fuck! She's torched!
MS-13 is actually the biggest piece of shit I've ever met.
And guess what? We are currently on tour right now, going across the country, screening OG and new All Gas, No Brakes material, and screening some never-before-seen Channel 5 documentaries that I think you'd like to see. So if you want to come to our C5 Carnival, which is a hybrid all-gas Channel 5 screening with a talent show and a rap battle embedded inside of it, you should definitely buy a ticket right now at www.channel5.news. It's called the C5 Carnival. We're going to so many different cities. If you live in
That's an evil whale.
Madison, Wisconsin, St. Paul, Minnesota,
Evil.
Salt Lake City, Utah, again, Chicago, Illinois, Philadelphia, PA, Tacoma, Washington, Los Angeles, California, San Francisco, California, Portland, Oregon, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Denver, Colorado, Vancouver, BC, Atlanta, Georgia, El Paso, Texas, Phoenix, Arizona, San Diego, California, or Albuquerque, New Mexico, you too can see the return All Gas, No Brakes episodes and the new Channel 5 secret documentary. And also, maybe you can be in the talent show. Hope to catch you guys on tour. Again, www.channel5.news. A night to remember, a night to never miss, a carnival of sorts, I'd say. Would you? See you there. Also, just want to say real quick, this entire podcast is available in audio-only format on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and many other platforms. So if you're somebody who likes to listen to just words and shit, or if you're a truck driver who has to have both hands at 10-2 with those eyes locked on the road, check out the audio feed. Just type in 5cast in all caps, you'll see a beautiful autumn field with a 5cast logo emblazoned on the front. That's us, baby. Check
that
it
a
out.
field?
All right,
That's a
let's get into
forest.
it.
Thanks for sitting down with us. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
nice to meet you, of course.
Yeah. For those who don't know,
Kinda
can
like
you
the
just tell
opposite
people
of
what your
you.
name is and who you mostly work for?
Yeah, my name is Doug McMillan. I'm a business reporter at the Washington Post. I've been doing investigations into the ways that businesses, corporations, industries cause harm to people over the years. And I've looked at everything from senior housing centers to the way American Red Cross trains lifeguards. They actually don't train lifeguards, they outsource that certification process. I've looked at ways the nuclear waste industry has a big problem on its hand with a bunch of nuclear waste sites around the country. So over the past year, I have been looking at this world of contractors to ICE, and was surprised, as a business reporter, I was surprised to learn that ICE has kind of this whole industry of private companies that do everything from transporting feeding, providing medical care, to detaining and eventually flying out of the country immigrants who are in ISIS custody. So as a business reporter, my alarms are popping off and saying this is a business story and we should approach this and look at it from the lens of who's making money, how do they potentially stand to gain even more under this administration as they ramp up the arrests of immigrant detainees, and what are the ways in which this system is exposing people to harm. There's a long kind of documented history of ICE detention is a scary place to be for a lot of people, and whether whatever your views on whether people who are whose only crime is coming into this country illegally, whatever your views on whether those people should be arrested and put into detention centers, I think we can all agree that people should be treated humanely in these buildings. And so there have been a lot of questions over the years, long before President Trump came into office, about whether they're being treated humanely. What I found over the past few months is those questions have been magnified. These facilities are now filling up with more and more people. In some cases, they're kind of overflowing with people. And this administration has ripped away some of the oversight measures that used to be in place to help make sure people were being treated humanely there.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's been so much reporting about what's happening on the ground,
I won't let this stop me.
less reporting on what actually happens behind the walls of these detention facilities, mainly because they don't allow reporters in. So your job is tracking down the experiences of people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated or detained in these facilities.
I hate this
and
game
getting that
so
information
much.
to the public.
Oh
You talk about
my
some of these
God.
safeguards being stripped away and different quality of life issues
We'll get
behind
past
the
this
wall.
part.
What are some of the
Take a
most
break.
poignant examples of human rights abuses inside ICE detention facilities?
Yeah, I'll give you a specific facility. One of the pet projects of this administration, a completely brand new detention facility was built out of basically an empty patch of desert in the Texas desert on the border. It's near the Fort Bliss Army base. They call this place Camp East Montana. It's in Texas, but they call it Camp East Montana. It's now the largest ICE detention center in the country. And basically, it's not even buildings. They set up these soft-sided structures that basically are big tents that hold. They currently hold around 4,000 detainees, but they're built to hold up to 5,000 detainees. And one of the things that my reporting showed was that when they were kind of racing to get this facility off the ground and build it really quickly and put detainees into it quickly, ICE sent its own inspectors in to monitor the conditions there. So some of the things that the ICE inspectors came back with, they found that the food was inedible and many people were being forced to kind of either eat expired food, rotten food, or just go hungry. They found that many people were not even getting screened medically when they came in. It's really important if you're going to try to provide adequate medical care for people that when they come into the door what their situation is physically, mentally, what their health situation is. Those screenings weren't happening, and they were also not giving people adequate means of communicating with the outside world. One of the federal standards for detention require you to either give detainees a tablet or phones or some way of communicating with lawyers, communicating with your family, and just talking to the outside world. These people were getting tablets, but they are broken for weeks. So some of the basic essentials that federal standards dictate you're supposed to give people in these facilities were not there. And so in that case, the inspectors came back and said that there were 60 violations of ICE's detention standards. We don't, at this point, that was a few months ago, we don't know if they've resolved any or all of those issues, but there are still significant concerns about this facility where there's been 3 deaths there just in the past few months.
And what was the autopsy report as far as the cause of death?
So there were 3 deaths in December and January. One of those deaths was a man named Geraldo Lunas Campos. He's a 55-year-old Cuban national, been detained there for a few months, and
at this point, you're probably not avoiding therapy because of stigma. You're probably avoiding therapy because you've become very good at coping. So good that you stop noticing how heavy everything feels. As a therapist who goes to therapy herself, it's important to remember.
Initially, ICE puts out a press release a few days after each person in its custody dies. They put out a press release, usually has a little bit of information about what happened to that person. In this case, they put out a press release saying, he was sent to solitary confinement, and a little while later, they found him unresponsive. Yeah. So really no information was given about, why this person had died. That seemed suspicious to me, and I had a source telling me that actually this was a result of a use of force incident. So immediately started kind of working the phones, trying to get inside what happened here. I got in touch with the family of this man who had been in touch with the medical examiner who was examining his body. And the medical examiner told the family that they believed that it was a homicide, and that this man looked like he had been essentially choked to death. I subsequently found witnesses, people who had also been detained and witnessed this event, who had witnessed guards choking the man to death, and they said his last words were, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." So pretty significant questions about what's going on in this facility. If a man who is detained there was choked to death by guards, what is the reason that they were having to kind of detain him, restrain him? What is the reason that use of force ultimately led to him dying? And what is the protocol for if a situation is out of hand and you have guards there who are trying to get it back in order? How do you kind of apply use of force in a way that does not end up killing the guy? So we're still reporting that story, and we're trying to figure out some of the answers to those questions.
You've uncovered a number of incidents similar to that have happened in ICE custody over the past year.
Well, so there's been a number of deaths. So far, that's the only one that we know of, at least in recent history, where a use of force incident behind the walls of the detention centers has led to a death. When you back up and look at the number of deaths in ICE detention, it's a really concerning picture. There were over 30 deaths in ICE detention in 2025. That's the highest number in at least 2 decades. And if you ask ICE about this, they will say that increase is just a reflection of, well, there's more people there. So because there's more people, there's a bigger population, there's likely going to be more deaths. But we've done some initial kind of calculations and run the numbers, and it looks like, actually, based on the number of total people that are booked in and the number of people who have died, it's still not, the death rate, the rate at which people are dying, is still higher, much higher than historically is the norm. So it's pretty concerning, and basically I'm trying to set out to answer the question, is ICE detention becoming more deadly than it has in the past? Because there's a higher number than in the past, and also in the past few weeks, that number's been accelerating. Just in the first 2 weeks of 2026, there were at least 6 deaths in that span. So it's pretty concerning. We don't know why exactly this is happening, but I'm looking at things like the medical care. I'm looking at things like what kind of food and nutrition is provided to these people, and what are they saying? What are these people telling us of, what are the problems inside these places?
Yeah, I've covered prison-related stuff for quite some time as well. Not to the extent that you have, but there seems to be a connection from what I've observed in the privatization of detention facilities and the amount of incidents like the one you described. It seems like when more facilities become private, there's greater exploitation, less oversight without federal jurisdiction or state jurisdiction. You have more weird things going down.
There's definitely a profit motive. And so every time you have a profit motive, then you introduce this desire for how do we get higher margins out of this business? Yeah. And where is the company? And so the 2 main companies
that lag
that
killed
operate
me.
these places are called Jew Group and CoreCivic. They are both publicly traded companies, so they are beholden to their public market stock and investors in their stock. Every
so
quarter
steep,
they
I
have to
need
go before
speed.
their shareholders and say, these are our results, this is what we're doing. And so how these companies please these investors
there
is very much dependent on what their profit margins are and how they make those profit margins bigger. I mean, there's many different ways, but like the most basic ways, and we see this in many industries, is you strip out things like labor. Labor is one of the biggest costs. You strip out things like the quality of care. And in the past, there has been a check on
like
that,
a third?
Where the government says, okay, we're gonna outsource these things to companies, but we're also gonna provide oversight. And we're going to have these oversight bodies that come in, inspect the facilities. They're going to make sure that the humane conditions are being met, and they're going to basically, ensure that these companies are fulfilling the terms of their contract, which is make sure that these people are provided humane detention. Well, what the Trump administration over the past year has done is actually strip out some of the layers of oversight. They demolished 2 of the main groups. They were basically under DHS, but they were somewhat independent of DHS, and they could go in and actually respond to concerns that were being raised by detainees. So those groups no longer have that authority. They have no longer have the power to go in there. And basically, I think there's a lot more trust is being placed on these companies to just kind of do right by the government and do right by the terms of the contract. Yeah. Is that trust well placed? I think we're kind of exploring that question right now.
Before I dive into a story, it's imperative that I do my homework. And a lot of times that homework means paying for things that aren't exactly easy to access, like court documents, public records databases, paywall archives, and, you know, websites that look like relics from the old days, 2005, with evil ads to try and trick me into clicking on them. But in a lot of cases, I need access to documents on some of these sketchball sites. In one case, like most, it costed about $10 a month, which seemed to me at the time like a trivial price to stand in the way of me and groundbreaking journalism. So I gave him my credit card info without even a single thought. Now, forgetting that I signed up for one $9.99 subscription sucks, but it's not like the end of the world. But the thing is, I do that exact kind of thing constantly, and my recurring charges added up, beginning to tally to astronomical figures in my accounts. The site tries to charge me fees, card numbers, so you fully trust whether asshole you just will give privacy. Salt Lake.
With new Millionaire for Life from the
Oh my God, Ad Central.
You have the chance to win $1 million every year for life. Which
Getting the
means
gambler
there's
in me
more room
going.
for play than ever before. This year, next year.
They make these two companies. They've both been around for decades, and they've both basically operated private prisons for a long time. And this has been a controversial industry. It's been around for a long time, but it's based on the idea that the state and federal governments have struggled over the years to properly operate prisons. And over time, they've seen kind of an opportunity to outsource some of the prisons. And by prisons, I'm saying people who are criminally charged and convicted and sent to serve a sentence in prison. You know, these places are now operated by local and state and federal governments, but they are also operated by these private companies that have, you know, been criticized with stripping out some of the quality of
usually
care
I'm such a
and quality of life inside
completionist,
these
but man,
places.
this game,
This kind of
not
backlash
taking any
has led the
chances.
Geo Group and Core Civics of the world to start focusing more and more on ICE detention contracts. So they have seen a decline in their former business, their core business of prisons, and so they're trying to replace that by going into ICE detention. And they've been very successful in that. So over the past 10 years or so, ICE has become the biggest source of revenue for Geo Group and Core Civic. So it's become
Forgot
a
I was
very
changing direction.
kind of symbiotic relationship. And it's also kind of this relationship
Forward when I meant to hit
has been very,
back.
very profitable for these
Come too
companies.
far to look back.
And under this Trump administration, we're now seeing these companies really kind of like take advantage of their position when the government is saying, we need to deport millions of people. Well, these companies are now going and saying, we can reopen all these former prisons that were closed under Obama and Biden, and we can fill those those prisons with immigrant detainees. So they're seeing kind of a huge expansion opportunity under this administration. And, you know, for the most part, their businesses have prospered because of that.
What percentage of detention facilities that are set up for immigrants are currently operated by either Geo Group or Core Civic?
The vast majority of immigrant detainees are inside of facilities run by private companies. Now, just the sheer number of ICE detention facilities is very big because many of them are small, and many of them include small county jails that hold prisoners, but they also hold ICE detainees. So there are dozens and dozens of those. These private detention contractors operate much larger detention facilities that typically hold between 500 to 2,500 detainees, and so they're more kind of concentrated in these private detention centers.
But let's say, like, who owns Otay Mesa?
I think that's Core Civic, but I'll have to check on that one. I think that's Core Civic.
Yeah, I think that it is, because I'm one of the few people, not to make this about myself, but I'm one of the few American non-immigrants to be detained in ICE detention.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Tell me about that.
I crossed the border with some coyotes in the Mexican state of Coahuila over the river, so I walked the river to Eagle Pass. I thought that I could do it. Turns out you can't. Even if you're an American citizen, you can't hop your own border.
Wow.
So I got held in an ICE detention facility for 3 days, and it was terrifying. It was like 40 people in a room, one bathroom, one jug of Gatorade in the center of the room. Everybody gets space blankets, 62 degrees in there. It's like a refrigerator. They played Marley and Me over and over again for days. I don't know if it's a torture method or if they just don't have any other DVDs there. And so everybody, but then I was there for days, but most people stay, the immigrants that were in my pod, it would be 1 day, then they'd be transferred to Otay Mesa, which is a private facility.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you answered the question that way, because there are these small processing centers that are owned by counties and states. Mine was owned by the actual DHS or CBP.
Yeah.
South Texas Processing Center.
Did you not tell them you're an American citizen?
Time trial though.
Really? They were so mad at me. They were just angry, and like I think I presented a real like moral conundrum for some of these ICE guys.
Yeah.
Because they were like, or the CBP guys.
Yeah.
Because they had been used to treating people like kind of like slabs of meat, like detainees. Like, where are you from? You're from Guatemala. All right, get in there. You're gonna be home soon. For me, they like didn't know whether to treat me like a detainee or a person.
Yeah.
But I got no phone calls, nothing like that. Nobody knew where I was.
Huh. Wow, that's quite an experience.
Yeah, but the point is, everybody was going from there to Otay Mesa.
Yeah.
I was wondering, you know, and then I looked it up, and it is owned by Core Civic.
Yeah.
So you have these private companies owning a lot of these private prisons or private detention facilities.
But
you've also done some reporting that shows inroads between Geo Group and the Trump administration itself.
Yeah.
And this
Like
is interesting
jumping's
because
almost
so
safer.
much of Trump's recent focus has been on acquiring different things like,
Yeah,
for example, oil
beautiful.
from Venezuela or rare earth elements from Greenland. And you see that there's many people in both of those natural resource lobbies that have funded his campaign and are currently embedded in some way in his administration.
Yeah.
Where are the
Railroad
inroads
tracks.
between Geo Group and the Trump admin?
Well, you know, I see this a lot, and I think it, and I've explored it, but there's this question of, you know, is the Trump administration detaining so many people for so long? Are they putting these people in these places to generate money for this industry? I haven't seen any smoking gun of that so far.
Why am I
But there are
surprised,
some
honestly?
pretty interesting connections that one would explore if you were exploring that question. Geo Group has a long history, in particular Geo Group, has a long history of hiring people who used to work at ICE. So there are now a number of current executives, people who are leading Geo Group, who used to help run ICE. So that's one connection. With this administration specifically, one former Geo Group executive, his name is David Venturella, is now one of the kind of the leading behind-the-scenes players at ICE. And he's actually, my sources tell me, he's helping to kind of oversee the big kind of detention push, and how we're going to expand detention is actually being run by a guy who used to work in one of the biggest detention contractors just like 2 years ago. And there are ethics rules against that, and David Venturella actually got a waiver from those ethics rules that we're still trying to get a hold of the text of that waiver, because we don't know on what grounds the government declared that that was okay. Another person with ties to Geo Group is Tom Homan, who's Trump's border czar. He's, you know, kind of been the big cheerleader of the immigration crackdown. You know, if you see his statements, he's been out kind of endorsing and pushing for an expansion of detention and supporting, you know, the expansion in places like the new facility at the Evergrande, the Alligator Alcatraz. You know, he was the guy out there defending, you know, how people were being treated there. So he's been a champion of that, and at the same time, he was a paid consultant for Geo Group just a couple of years ago. So there is this connection of, you know, are the people in this administration really helping their buddies, or are they somehow profiting directly themselves? Again, haven't seen any smoking gun of that, but I think it is something that's worth exploring, because, as you mentioned, you know, people in this administration do not seem to have any qualms about that at all, and there have been many examples of people in this administration enriching themselves from the policies that are rolling out of the White House right now.
The AI Toolkit is live on Artlist. Every leading AI tool you need for video creation is now organized for you. What is that? All that's missing is your story. Get all the latest image, video, and voiceover models in one clean experience, so you can focus on what really matters.
Basically,
telling
have to
your
like
story.
jump that section. That's so narrow.
Go to Artlist and start creating without limits.
A degree, but still no
Families
career?
earning six.
They say higher education is outdated, irrelevant. We say, don't settle for the status quo.
Man, I'm so excited for Sniper Elite.
We shattered.
I didn't know they came out with a new one. I love that game.
Redefining what higher education looks like. We lead with a pioneering spirit in classrooms that are incubators for bold ideas. Our academically rigorous, industry-driven programs reflect a commitment to merit and Christian truth. GCU believes education shouldn't be a privilege. Affordable education should be accessible to all.
You want opportunity. You want purpose.
And can you think of any other examples of people being personally enriched by kickbacks like that?
Not off the top of my head. Those are the ones that come to mind right now. You
Well,
mean between the private prisons specifically?
Just in general, like as far as tracing that like pattern of behavior to other sectors in Trump admin.
Oh, I probably shouldn't go there today.
Okay.
I don't want to overspeak, and I haven't done personal reporting on that.
Well, for example, like the oil and gas lobby were instrumental. They spent almost I think it was like multi-billion dollars pumping money into Trump's campaign. And then the same guy who oversaw those contributions through a super PAC is now one of his energy secretaries who set up the meeting in the White House with like Chevron and Halliburton after the Maduro kidnapping and oil seizure. So for anybody watching this, it all seems pretty illegal. I'm curious if the private prison lobby, Geo Group and CoreCivic, had any campaign contributions in 2024.
Yeah, they were both very big donors to not only the campaign, but I believe that both of them also donated to the inauguration fund, and they might have also donated to subsequent. There's a lot of opportunities now in DC for companies that want to get in with the administration to donate to various things, and I think they have been, Geo Group and CoreCivic have consistently been one of the top contributors to that. You know, they're not alone. There's many companies that are donating across the political spectrum and, you know, across many different industries. So it's hard to look at one donation and say, you know, this led to that. But it's definitely, you know, I think it's something worth noting. One other person that comes to mind is Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. She used to also be a lobbyist for Geo Group, so she knows that. Yeah, she knows that company well.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
And you know, she as the Attorney General, she oversees the Bureau of Prisons, which is phasing out their work with Geo Group right now. So she has some kind of, you know, a little bit of potential conflict there. But the Attorney General doesn't directly oversee ICE and the things that they do.
I'm trying to understand, because I'm not like a stock market genius when it comes to publicly traded companies, but what is the process for generating revenue
you can
like
straddle
after
them.
people are detained? Like, how does Geo Group profit from people being detained at these facilities?
It's all done through these contracts, and the contracts are negotiated between ICE has a contracting office, and they deal with the companies directly, and they say, you know, basically we're gonna set up a detention operation here, and these are all the things that we're gonna agree to doing. It's gonna house people humanely. It's gonna offer them, you know, beds and clothes and nutritious food and recreation.
I think we're at a third.
It's gonna lay out the terms of the contract, but a big part of that contract is gonna be something called the bed rate. And so the bed rate is basically
probably
the
4,000
amount of money
meters
that the government is paying per detainee. They can be structured in different ways, but generally in many of these detention centers, they are incentivized to be detaining more people. So that's why when you listen to, you can actually hear, you can listen to the earnings calls that these companies do with their investors every quarter, and they'll talk about things like the bed rates, and you'll hear there's a lot of focus on how many detainees are in ICE's system now. We started this Trump administration, we started with around
That's what's so frustrating about this game. You lose so much
detainees on average per day. We're now up around above 70,000 per day. So,
so much progress, not even knowing what you're
most of those
supposed
people
to do.
are being housed in some way by one of these private companies. So generally that has increased revenue. The two main companies we're talking about are seeing record revenues right now. There's some concern about, investors are actually starting to be a little bit concerned about whether that's going to continue. The pace of the increase in detainees has actually slowed down a little bit. When we've gone from like 60,000 to 70,000, starting to slow down a little bit, maybe because the administration is not able to arrest as many people as it thought it could per day, or maybe they're running out of people that they can arrest.
Also, there's more fear at the border.
Maybe.
Yeah. So generally, the vibe with these companies at the beginning of this administration was, this is going to be the greatest thing that's ever happened to own, you know, shareholders of this company.
Evil.
Now the vibe is a little bit more muted, a little bit more concerned about, you know, is this really going to be a transformative event for these companies? But they're doing fine. They're doing really well right now.
Yeah. Do you see a world in which maybe like Trump opens the borders back up to get more money for the groups? I mean, they did it during the election, prior to the election.
I think he would have a hard time explaining that to his base.
Well, but you got to think about, I mean, Governor Abbott of Texas, he refused to sign off on the bipartisan legislation that would have limited asylum seekers from hopping the border and claiming asylum here.
Right.
Because they
that
knew
is actually one of the most
needed
unhinged
to rely on the immigration
like,
issue to fearmonger
Donald
and
Trump
generate,
literally sabotaged the immigration process.
You don't think that maybe there'd be
so
a
that he
call
can
to Geo
complain
Group
about the immigration
and
process
and Trump
more.
that are like, yo, let's open the border back up. We need that bed rate cracking this year.
It's an interesting point because it speaks to the question of who is in these facilities now. So in the past, these facilities tend to be mostly border crossers and tend to be people who are arrested by CBP along the border and taken to these facilities. That's also why you tend to see these facilities distributed along the south and the southwest, places like Florida, all the way to Texas and New Mexico, California. A growing portion, I don't know if it's a majority, but a growing portion of the people inside these places were arrested in what they call the interior, which is basically all the non-border states. This is an increasingly diverse population of people because they are, going to people's homes, they're going to schools, they're going to churches, they're going to courtrooms, and they're arresting people who, have sometimes lived, decades in the U.S.
Sometimes waiting for their own court
jobs,
date.
paying taxes,
They always
contributing
talk
to their
about
communities. And they're taking these people and putting them into detention centers. Sometimes these people are parents, grandparents in detention centers. So the kind of the makeup of who is in these facilities is changing a lot and is no longer just kind of the border crossers. So that's also kind of changing, the business for these people. A lot of these people are probably more likely to have health problems because I think on average they're arresting and detaining older people. And so that has become a challenge for some of these companies. How do we provide healthcare? They're not suddenly going to start spending more money on healthcare. So how do we actually adequately provide for these people who have healthcare? One of the best examples is this man is detained in Georgia, in a detention facility in Georgia. He was brought to this country when he was, I think, 2 years old, when he was a very small child, and he has no legs. He has a double prosthetics, and typically somebody like that would just have gotten a waiver and been released. They would have made some accommodation when they were arrested, not detained. This man has been held for months and months. I think probably over 10 months, maybe almost a year. This man has been held there, even though there's a coalition of activists who are all kind of urging his release. He explained to me in a phone call last year that he needs to plug his prosthetics into a wall in order to charge them every night, and they're not giving. He tells me that ICE is not giving him enough time to charge them, so a lot of times they just don't work. And when his prosthetics don't work, he can't move, so he can't even walk down to the end of the hallway to get food for himself. He has to ask somebody to get food. So this is the kind of it's a good example of how these types of people who in a normal year wouldn't have been detained, and these companies that detain people wouldn't have had to think about how to accommodate something like that. They're having to deal with that and figure that out on a bigger level. It's not just this guy, it's many people who are dealing with situations like this.
And you think it's maybe fair to speculate that meeting this detention quota at these private facilities could be related to the sheer amount of people that are being pulled from the interior and held indefinitely?
It's hard to prove what people's motives are, but if you listen to the administration, they're trying to meet Trump's expectation of millions of people being deported. Right now, we're nowhere near that. We were even close to 1 million people being deported in this term. I'm not even sure that they had the highest number of deportations in a single year of any president yet. I think that there has been pressure from what Trump is saying in the White House on down to what Stephen Miller says, to what Tom Homan says in press briefings. I think at one point they said they were targeting 3,000 arrests a day. I don't know if they've met that or come close to that, but yeah, the administration has been staking their political livelihood and their political message around, we want to deport millions of illegal immigrants. Before you worry about the private companies, I think you should hold them to that. Are they actually accomplishing that?
You mentioned the bed rate. Can you give a specific number of how much is generated per head at one of these places?
DHS usually publishes a bed rate for the whole system, not for individual places. And I think in the past it's been around $150 per person per day.
Restream, one live stream, 30 plus destinations. If you want to multi-stream, go to restream.com.
Fail to do so, countless lives will be lost. We can't do this alone.
When you're taking people out of their communities and out of sometimes their jobs, and you're taking away their ability to pay taxes and contribute to our society, no longer are these people contributing to society. they're actually now a major cost. I think that's an interesting kind of comparison when you start to see like, you know, industries of communities that used to really rely on immigrant labor and immigrant taxpayers.
Yeah, but I guess the initial question was like, how do these companies make money? The bed rate costs the company or the taxpayer that money, right?
Yeah.
How do the individual companies profit from detention?
So they have a margin, just like a hotel, just like any business. So they have a bed rate, they agree on with the government, and the government pays them, let's say $150 a day per person. They now take that $150, they say, okay, $10 of that is gonna go to pay for our phone bills for this facility. $5 of that is gonna go to pay for the food that we have to distribute. So like when you take that $150, it gets sliced up into all the different costs that go into running this facility. Many subcontractors, many other companies are coming in to fulfill different services. And at the end of the day, you have some portion of that is the profit that these places make. The biggest slice of that pie is almost always labor. I don't know the exact number, but it's a significant portion of that pie, where again, you start to see some kind of messing around with this model when the detention companies say, well, you know, do we really need to have 8 guards in this hallway? What if we could make
I just have some loose screws in my mind after
we
having
really need
this
to
bath
have a
the whole
medical
day.
team of 2 doctors and 6 nurses. Could we really make do with 1 doctor and 3 nurses? There are some regulations. Typically, the contracts will say you have to staff these with a certain number of people, but there's also been a long history of the companies kind of failing to meet those staffing goals.
Would you say that on average, the conditions of a privately owned detention facility are worse than that of one that is managed by a county, state, or federal governing body?
It's hard to say. I think there have been some studies that show that, but I don't know if there's anything conclusive. How do you rank human misery? How do you rank suffering? And how do you rank conditions? I don't know anything definitive about that.
So a lot of young people our age see stuff happening like mass detention, just basically everything going on, every distraction deployed by the Trump administration, the Greenland acquisition, as a distraction from the biggest story of the day, which is the Jeffrey Epstein file release. In your experience reporting, do you give any credence to that theory? They shut down the government to avoid the release of the Epstein files. And right when the second batch was about to come out, all of a sudden, the operation begins in Minnesota. Somali fraud. Everything is, the extreme fear-mongering begins.
Well, I mean, just going back to immigration, I don't know what this president thinks in his own head about immigration, but I do know there's a very strong sentiment held by a large portion of this country, you know, if not majority, then close to a majority of this country, who strongly feel like illegal immigrants need to be locked up and sent away from this country. And this is a big reason, if not the main reason, that this president got reelected. It was running on that. So I don't think it's necessarily a distraction. I think that this issue is his core issue.
When this whole conversation started, you mentioned even outside of Core Civic and Geo Group that you do a lot of reporting to encourage corporate accountability and talk about the ways that big business has hurt the everyman and hurt people in the country.
Yeah.
Who are the top 5 most evil corporations?
I'm not going to go there.
Okay, not evil. Who are the top 5 most harm-causing corporations according to what you've reported?
There's a lot of ways to measure that, right? How are you going to look at harm? Do you measure harm by the amount of greenhouse gases that a company emits?
Well, let's say Blackstone and their control over real estate. That kind of stuff.
Well, so there are different ways. Harm can be harming consumers by charging them exorbitant rates for things they vitally need. That category would be, look at the monopolies that exist in the country, like telecoms. I don't really have any choice in my house which cable and internet provider I can get. I'm at the mercy of this company that I pay exorbitant amount of money so I can have internet at my house. Those kinds of companies are not very popular, and I think that you could argue that's one kind of harm. Another kind of harm is employees, employer harm. Who are the companies that employ a lot of people who are unhappy, who feel like they're not given a fair shot at raising a family and benefits and getting fair wages? You know, there's been a number of questions about Amazon over the years. Is Amazon a fair employer to people who, you know, work in these warehouses and work their butts off to kind of make this logistics system work? Is that, you know, a good living for them? So employer harm is another kind. And there's environmental harm. The oil and gas, the fossil fuel companies will be the top of the list of, you know, environmental harm companies. As a corporate accountability reporter, I think about this a lot. How do you look for the companies that are causing the most harm? How do you slice which companies are doing the most damage to the world? There's different ways to measure that. One way is just, are companies killing people? I did some reporting on, as a Californian, you'll know PG&E has actually been convicted of killing people based on negligence that they cause explosions and
No matter
fires
how
in
many
that
times
state.
I fall,
Another one is
I'll
Boeing
keep on
has been
moving.
under the gun in the past few years about safety lapses and a whole culture of prizing kind of Wall Street earnings and financial results over actual safety and kind of focusing on engineering the most safe plane we can. And that really came back to bite them in a big way when those two 737 MAX crashes happened. Our company's killing people. Another layer that we're now starting to think about is tech and AI. And so, what is the amount of good that these companies, Google and OpenAI and Amazon, Microsoft, the companies that are telling us this is really something great. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to change the world. It's going to change how you do work. It's going to change how you live. Well, how do we measure that against the real harms that the technology is now kind of imposing on society? It's smartphones and apps are demanding our attention. They're kind of hooking us into kind of always focusing on the software at the risk of, living our lives. They're demanding our attention. They are demanding our data. And these AI tools, there's a lot of concern now about how they're potentially manipulating our emotions or manipulating our psyche and potentially putting vulnerable people and children at risk of harm to themselves. So I think that's another kind of harm that we're starting to see with technology companies. And
when you talk about AI putting young people in harm's way, are you talking about encouraging self-harm through ChatGPT, flukes in the software that don't detect, I guess, red flags?
Yeah, there's a number of lawsuits that are going on right now about parents whose children committed suicide, and they think that a chatbot played a role in kind of encouraging that kind of thinking.
It's hard because my first impulse is it's the death of creativity. It's going to make it easy to replicate and duplicate the authentic style of others. This is the end. This is the ultimate brain rot final boss. Our youth are cooked. We're never going to have original thoughts again. Every single person is now a commodified property of the algorithm. There's no privacy anymore. The only option is living in a trailer park in the desert alone. But
well, you already do that, so
yeah,
you're good.
And then I think about it and I'm like, are we just the people that used to ride horses and got pissed when the Model T came around?
Yeah.
Or are we just the people who used to read and then the Kindles came around?
We just need to adapt.
Is this just another technological advancement that great artists will learn to use to their advantage?
One of the stories that's making the round in my world is that a newspaper in Cleveland, I forget exactly which one, they made this public statement saying that they weren't going to hire some writer who wanted to write because they said that now the job of journalists at this newspaper is to just go out and report, get information, and then feed it to basically an AI editor who's going to write the story. It's a very interesting idea. I personally think that we're not ready for that. I'm biased. I like to write stories, and I personally think that writing is thinking. The way that I write my stories is informed by what I gathered when I'm reporting, and when I'm out reporting, I'm also looking for things that are going to go in the story. So I find those two things connected, and I also think that readers don't want to read AI slop. If you don't take the time to write it, why should anybody take the time to read it?
And I hope that you're right, and I hope that real authenticity is able to cut through the AI slop.
I hope, yeah.
I think that it will, but at the same time, I catch myself sometimes not realizing something's AI. That's because I'm scrolling, and I really feel like there's a war for our minds.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a nefarious force that is trying to make us as stupid as possible. Then I realize, no, there's no boogeyman. It's just a capital incentive structure of the platforms. Engagement is dollars. These are for-profit companies or private companies. You can best get engagement from a user of, let's say, Instagram or TikTok by addicting them to it through short form.
I mean, look at the mental health problem again. One thing that ChatGPT could do when somebody starts expressing suicidal ideation is they could just stop.
Yeah.
They could say, you're not going any further than that.
Get tax expertise without legal fees. Switch to a TurboTax expert from $150. All tax situations, all returns, $150, all in. No surprises. Now this is taxes.
I'm so close. Just focus.
Have you ever wanted a sticker of your cat? Even though we prefer mules, we still make it fast and easy to order cat stickers. To get started, select the size and quantity. Upload your cat image and breeze through checkout. Within a few hours, we'll send you an online proof showing you how we intend to print and cut your custom cat stickers. You can request changes to your proof until you're happy. With easy ordering and fast delivery, Sticker Meow, Sticker Mule is the internet's favorite place to get custom cat stickers. Try 10 custom stickers for $1.
Sam Altman, I think, as OpenAI has talked a little bit about, we're going to implement safeguards like that.
Continuing to improve how our models recognize and respond to signs of mental and emotional distress and connect people with care.
But as far as I know, the chatbot keeps talking to you, even if you kind of go down these kind of dark directions. So why are they doing that? Why, I think that there might be hubris right now with some of these Silicon Valley companies. Well, they can be your therapist. They can actually help you through these problems. We've seen where hubris has led corporations in Silicon Valley in the past, and it's not good. These kinds of things should be really approached with a lot of caution and a lot of concern for, I don't want my therapist to be a software engineer in Menlo Park.
Yeah, of course. Or I don't want my therapist to necessarily give me the standard GPT therapy, because I've noticed, different topic, a lot of modern therapy tries to teach you to be selfish. You ever see a therapist before? I know HIPAA violation, but you ever see a therapist sometimes, you tell them your problems, but you have people to provide for, you have a family, and they tell you, you know what, like, put yourself first. Self-care is number one. And you're like, no, it isn't. It's not number one. It's not number one at all. It's like number 10. I do feel like some of the modern therapy is coded in that way that helps people get around their responsibilities.
Maybe, yeah.
And so I think that's why the divorce rate is so high. I'm just kidding. Only kidding. We need more traditional human beings in the flesh to maybe get a good read on us. Like, no human being can just be fed advice through a computer.
Definitely teletherapy is good and it opens access to people, but having a human being and a human brain thinking about your problems and what are potential solutions and how to address the problems in your life, that's something uniquely a human can do, at least right now.
It's also all very scary for our position as journalists. The newspaper industry and the digital media industry has already been decimated by the dwindling attention span of online users, to where now every platform, even the big dogs like Washington Post, New York Times, is having to adapt to short form just to reach anybody below 25.
Yeah.
So this, I hope, is not the nail in the coffin for legit information.
Well, look at my news organization just laid off 350 people just in the last couple of weeks. It's a lot of my friends and honestly some of the best journalists in the whole world just woke up one morning to find out they lost their job. And that is obviously not just a reflection of what we're talking about and the decimation of the business model. That had to do with it.
Yeah.
It also had to do with management decisions at the company that I work for. It is a reality that this thing that we do is changing and we need to learn how to adapt.
And specifically, one of the benefits, like for you, is that you working for a big organization gives you legal safeguards. You can write an article about a corporation that would have the power to sue an individual into poverty, and you have that shield of the Washington Post to at least have your back. They've got retainers for when I'm sure
well,
you've
the flip
got
side of that is you have to convince the lawyers that it's okay to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But once that article gets published, for me, if I put something out there and somebody doesn't like what I wrote, I'm being sued right now for a violation of the Federal Wiretap Act by a guy that I've never even filmed, met, and certainly never wiretapped. I interviewed somebody who spoke negatively about him, and he's trying to sue me as a way to punish me for platforming his adversary. That could never happen with the Washington Post. Another fear that I have is in the post-AI journalism barren industry, if there is only, 4 journalists at every news outlet who are just have like a bunch of robots around writing up their daily briefings, then all these other journalists who are going to have to do freelance work are now going to be easier to be targeted by the corporate
Well,
overlords.
then a law firm can open up a journalism practice.
Yeah.
And they can serve all the journalists.
Yeah,
who need
they
that
love
help.
us. Law firms are dying to take us on contingency. Have you ever had a real threat from a big corporation where you're like, oh my God, I got to slow my roll here?
I've written about companies where I had to go through a lot of hoops to get our internal lawyers on board with hitting the publish button. The go-to move is to hire, there's a handful of defamation lawyers. You know all their names, and they're always the first call these companies hire. They can create problems for getting the story published, but we believe strongly in our reporting. And if I have facts, you're free to publish facts. And so that's what we do.
But I guess the fear is that, if you take testimony from somebody, if that testimony is thought to be false, you can be sued for not doing your due diligence. Like with the Boeing whistleblower case.
Yeah.
Would Boeing be able to sue the Washington Post for being like, this guy's full of shit, you should have known that?
I don't know enough about that one to comment on it. If you're reporting on allegations somebody made, you at a minimum need to take great care and diligence with trying to confirm the accuracy and trying to understand the basis for those claims, and also giving a very fair chance for the other person to comment.
And that's the main reason I'm afraid for the future of journalism in a post-AI world. You know what an anti-slap statute is, right? When you're being sued for defamation by a billionaire who's trying to bully you, you used to be able to file an anti-slap motion, which basically said, hey, this lawsuit needs to be thrown out, this is not right. Sometimes the judge wouldn't understand, so she would deny it. You used to be able to appeal. Right now, they just reversed the anti-slap appeal process, meaning you have to move to deposition and summary judgment. It's crazy, like the safeguards to protect journalists, especially independently, are getting really, really small.
Real journalism, I think, still matters. I don't think that AI will do our jobs ultimately. Certain aspects of our lives can be automated, but the idea of gathering new information, gathering facts that are hard to find, getting sources to tell us things, that maybe they're not supposed to tell us, and revealing information about the world and how it works, how government works, how big corporations work from the inside. This is stuff that a chatbot can't do, as far as I know yet. So I believe that that's going to continue to exist.
That video that came out recently, there was a drone shot of like people inside of a detention facility in the outdoor area wearing like blue and red ponchos, like talking to the camera. Do you know what facility that was taken at?
I don't. Vaguely rings a bell, but I don't know exactly which one that is.
Is there anything that American people and American voters can do to stop what's going on with the expansion of these detention facilities?
One of the few groups of people who are actually allowed into detention centers are members of Congress. And so members of Congress do have an oversight role by law that they're allowed to go, given a certain amount of notice, show up to the facility, tour the facility, talk to people who are inside. To some extent, they're a little bit limited in what they can do with that information. So, one of the things people can do is vote. They can talk to their representative in Congress, push for more transparency, push for more policies around this, and they can vote in the midterms about what they see in these detention centers that they do or they don't like. Going back to these warehouses that they're building, these are buildings that are not going to adhere to any local zoning laws, because the federal government's position is that when they buy these places, it's federal property and it's no longer kind of beholden to local laws, whether that's zoning or whether that's any kind of permitting processing, which is kind of strikes a lot of locals as insane, because these are buildings that were not built to house humans. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there's something in the Constitution called the Supremacy Clause. It says when the federal government have a policy and a priority, that will take precedence over local jurisdiction. So ultimately, at the end of the day, it does look like the federal government will be able to buy and operate these warehouses. They're probably going to bring in some of the outside companies we're talking about to run the detention centers, renovate them, and run them. Even though these communities are going to have to kind of live with the impacts on their infrastructure, they're not going to really have any meaningful engagement with these buildings, which I think is exactly what you're talking about. Is like, I don't like this is happening, but I don't feel like there's anything I can do about it.
Where is the first ICE warehouse getting built?
We think that the first one is going to open in the next few months, maybe as soon as April, in Maryland. That's right outside of Hagerstown. It's about 90 minutes west of here.
So yeah, I want to cover the story. I was just trying to figure out the right place to begin the journey.
Well, this is a problem with my reporting, is how do I take my readers inside these facilities when I can't go inside?
You can do what I did. If you right now cross the Rio Grande, you will be arrested and taken to an ICE facility for 3 days. I was under Biden. I did it under the Biden administration, but I'm sure that Trump would probably make an example out of you.
How do we report on what's going on inside if we can't get in? So that's the challenge right now I'm trying to figure out. So one way is audio, video. These places have surveillance cameras. Those should be public records. Can we somehow get our hands on the surveillance cameras? There's 911 calls made from these facilities. Those are records of real harms and things that are happening inside the facilities. So this is kind of what I'm working on. It's like, how do we get documentary proof of what's happening inside these places? Because I can't go inside, but I need to take my readers and show them, kind of bridge the empathy gap. Because when you can't go inside, you don't have any empathy for it. You don't know what it's like inside there. You don't know what was it like? Tell me, was it like a prison? Like, what did it feel like?
So I've been to jail for graffiti, county jail in South Dakota. It's not where I'm from. I was on a road trip. County jail is a lot better than ICE detention. The difference is that in county jail, you get all of the regular privileges of being an American citizen in jail. They ask you if you want to go to the library, you get some Stephen King books, you go, you sleep the entire time. There's 8 dudes, everyone's got a bed, there's lights out, there's chow time. In ICE detention facilities, there's no commissary, there's no phone calls, the lights never turn off, there's a constant...
Really?
The one that I was in never turns off, and they would call it the ayyy, which is the ice box.
Okay.
And you talk about deterrent methods like alligator Alcatraz, they keep the pods that house the detainees as cold as possible with the hopes that they'll return to their home country and be like, yo, it's freezing in there, it was horrible.
Did you get a blanket or anything?
They give you a single space blanket, which is that 25-cent reflective thing, the silver one. They give you no pillows, so everyone sleeps on their own shoes.
Wow.
Many of the shoes are covered in gross water from the Rio Grande. They give you 1 or 2 meals a day. It's disgusting. Shared bathroom for 40 people, 1 toilet. It's in the corner. Everyone has to watch you take a shit. People are holding...
The only thing better than wearing a well-made gun belt is knowing you got it on sale. For a limited time only, our handmade in the United States tactical gun belt is 43% off. Ditch the floppy old leather for a reinforced core encased in 2 layers of heavy-duty scuba webbing. It makes you wonder if the lifetime warranty is even necessary. Whether you're going to work or spending the day at the range, experience the perfect combination of toughness and comfort with our tactical gun belt for only $50. Follow the link in this Avid Gear Up today.
Protect yourself with NordVPN and receive an Amazon gift card.
create a new NordVPN account and select one of our 2-year
for days.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
You think that when that's with one cellmate, 40 other dudes, but there is strange loopholes. For example, you can request snacks all the time. I don't know why that exists, but you can request specifically a Capri Sun juice box. There's a button where you can say you need it. So there's all these really strange things where you're like, are you guys trying to meet some like requirement legally?
Interesting. Well, a lot of these places do have commissaries, and there's a theory that like they make the food that you get for free really bad, and they jack up the prices of the stuff in the commissary. People have actually compared the prices of like a tube of toothpaste in the commissary versus one you can just buy at a local, drugstore in the same area, and it's like $13 for the same tube of toothpaste that you get for $2 somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's potentially part of the business model. There's always ways of trying to make money. Pretty universally, I've heard that the food in these places that they give you like cold burritos and stuff, this almost inedible.
I was in South Texas Processing Center in Eagle Pass, Texas. Most people from there were going to Otay Mesa or a facility in San Antonio. Those places probably have tablets, commissary, etc. But I was in the very first stage of processing. Some people had been there for a really long time. There's a judge. They had a 24-hour Zoom judge. Still, like, you can't have an appointment for like 4 days. But as far as your news gathering practices, the big challenge of documenting it is getting footage and audio from inside the facilities to bridge the empathy gap.
Evidence.
Have you gotten anything so far?
We did get this inspection report that ICE's own inspectors that went in there, and they documented 60 violations of this place in Fort Bliss, Texas, and El Paso, Texas. This is a government's own inspectors documenting these things. We've looked at these facilities that are relying on 911 for like medical emergencies almost on a daily basis. But as far as audio, video, we're still working on that. There has been some like cell phone videos leaking out at some of these places that show kind of just like dozens of people in a small room that was never meant to hold people for that long. Images have a power to move people and to kind of help people feel for what's going on in these places that, none of the words that I write can do. So that's why I think it's important to try to figure out how to get images from them.
And you feel like the kind of digital blackout space that's been created by the facility has made it harder to reach people.
Yeah.
As far as getting surveillance footage, I'm sure you've done FOIA.
Yeah, we're waiting for some.
Because the Epstein files, not to bring it all the way back there, they also said there were no files. It took Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey campaigning for months to get the Epstein Transparency Act passed.
Yeah.
And finally, all of a sudden, they exist. Do you think that there could be a watershed moment where you gain access to a lot of media from behind the wall?
I'm hoping it's this death that we talked about earlier with this man that was killed in a detention center. I'm hoping that there's video of that. We requested it. I think just understanding what happened there, it's going to be hard to do without seeing what the video looks like. I think that could be really, really powerful if we can get our hands on something that shows that rather than just relying on people's eyewitness stories about it.
Well, best of luck, man. I appreciate your time.
It's been great. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say to the world, the people, the children of the world, or not children, but just the viewers?
Is this real life?
Nothing
Or
profound.
Did I follow
your dreams?
again?
Yeah, follow your dreams. It's great.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man.
Channel 5 Live Worldwide, Hollywood and Vine. Fuck the authority, Channel 5 News. Channel 55. We don't fuck with customers. 5 is the best number.
Don't upload your videos to YouTube. Upload to Restream, where we will live stream it to YouTube and all.
Oh, you know what I wanted to watch? There was a video I really wanted to watch with you, chat, because everyone linked it to me. It was called like the Glizzy Scam, and it got no views. And they changed the name to like the Stadium Scam with hot dogs, and then it got no views. And then they changed it to we uncovered the illegal scam at the heart of every stadium, and then it got 1 million views. Like they took the Glizzy out of the thumbnail and out of the title, and then it went crazy. It's so funny because everyone kept linking it to me, and I was like, no one's watching it. So I decided, let's watch this. It's apparently about Glizzies, but they can't say that.
All know food costs too much at games, but
H-Rock, did you take the Glizzy out of the title because you wanted it for yourself? Timed out for 6 years?
what if I told you this slice and this beer and these hot dogs are all part of an illegal scheme perpetrated by billionaires?
I'm used to outrageous prices, but this is just a special kind of hell.
Okay. I'm at Madison Square Garden, not just for a mildly stale pretzel, but to meticulously